right, hello children, it's Pastor Matthew here for our Children's Praise video. We're going to be going through an important question here in question 18 of the Shorter Catechism. If you remember, if you've been with us these past few weeks, we've been talking a lot about what is sin and why is sin such a big problem when the Bible explains sin to us. It explains it in lots of different ways. So these questions are helpful because they're going to show us how we can look at what sin is and what is the real problem in the world. Now here's question 18. It says this: what is sinful about man's fallen condition? So we know that in the garden, Adam and Eve fell. We call that being fallen. So what's so wrong about being fallen? What is sinful about it? Now here's a really long answer. Try your best to pay attention, and we'll look at one part about it in more detail. The answer is this for the question, what is sinful about man's fallen condition? The sinfulness of the fallen condition is twofold, two parts. First is what is commonly called original sin. That's number one. Original sin is there is guilt in Adam's first sin with his lack of original righteousness and the corruption of his whole nature. And here's number two. Second are all the specific acts of disobedience that come from original sin. So the two parts of sin is original sin and specific acts of sin. So the specific acts of sin, those ones make pretty good sense. I think we understand what that means. When you do something you're not supposed to do, that's called doing an action or doing something that's sinful, right? But the first one is a little bit harder to understand, and that's the one I want to spend time with today. It's not just that we do sinful things, but that those sinful things that we do actually come from inside of us. They're not outside of us, like we actually choose to go do something sinful, but from our heart, we actually like doing sinful things. That's even a bigger problem. So let me explain it this way with this verse in Matthew 15, where Jesus talks about sin. He speaks to these people to say, what's going on inside the heart. He says, are you still without understanding? Do you not see whatever goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is expelled? But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and that defiles the person. That's an important word to remember. Defile, that's to be dirty. From out of the heart proceed evil thoughts and murder, adultery and sexual immorality and theft, false witness and slander. These are what defile the person. And then he speaks about how what we eat really isn't that important. So, it's not so much what goes inside of you, but actually what comes out of you that makes it sin. So he said, from the heart proceed evil thoughts. Evil thoughts. That's what we call defilement. That's what makes us dirty. So when you think of the word defilement, think of the images we've talked about before, which is like being covered in mud. But that's not just on the outside of us, that's on the inside of us. So that's why the confession, the question said, original sin is the losing original righteousness. It's not having a perfectly clean heart. Our heart is all messed up. But it's not just us, it's the whole world is sinful, right? So when Adam and Eve fell, the world was changed. Everything that was good and beautiful ended up becoming very, very ugly and plain and just not clean, right? So the image I want you to see for this is, imagine in the garden, God made all the animals. And like here we have a lion and a lioness, and they're there resting. But if you notice, when you look at the picture, there's no real color, right? So this is kind of what the world is like that we live in. It's not as beautiful and clean and vibrant as it could be because of original sin or original corruption or original dirtiness. So here's an example of what Jesus does because of what he's done for us on the cross, that he's begun to make a new creation, and he started with his very own body. And this is what it's like. He started wiping everything clean. And as he did that, do you see what happens? It all becomes more beautiful and more colorful. And all the lines are beginning to be filled in, and everything becomes the way it really should be. And it's just so much better. But it's not entirely done. You see the outer edges, there's still a lot of corruption that needs to be fixed. But Jesus has started this. And he starts right in the center of the problem, which is, and I want you to do this, I want you to point to your heart and say, when you accept Jesus into your heart and you accept him to be your Lord and Savior, that's where he starts. He starts to color like your heart. He paints over your heart and cleans it with fresh water so that you actually can have a clean heart that doesn't want to do sinful things and doesn't have to be in corruption or dirty, which is what we call, the word to remember is original sin. So try to learn what original sin means and what it means to have a dirty heart and what it means to have a clean heart in Jesus.